Hey guys, and welcome back to Castle Crush, and today we're going to be going over the Reaper tournament here that happened recently, and this was a pretty interesting tournament here because I really only have tried maybe seriously in like 2 or 3 other tournaments, and none of those were super recently, so I definitely had some catching up to do. And this video is mostly going to be a lot of the best matches that I had in my one sort of final run at the championship. And I mean, you'll see what happens here, but I had some really good matches actually against some pretty good players, and definitely helped to sharpen up my Castle Crush skills. So this match right here, they got that Valkyrie out there, but I was lucky enough to take it out with my Black Witch, and we got right in here again with the Archer Queen, and looking pretty good. They hit a Skull Queen setup here. You can see the deck I'm using in this one. That was an interesting match I was using. I was using a deck with a dragon and that's interesting. I don't remember that deck very much. I didn't use that deck very much. Actually, again, I used it here in this match as well. And this was sort of like a Golem Angel type of deck here with some very supporting cards. I think I took this from someone who seemed to be pretty good, and I was like, okay, I'll just see how this deck goes. I basically had to try and just test out decks until I found one that I liked, because honestly, again, I was not familiar with what the meta might possibly be since I hadn't played in recent tournaments. So I really just had to kind of mix and match until I found a deck that seemed good, and it ended up not being this one, but this was still fun to play with. So the main decks I played with this one I played with a Skull Queen Spectre deck, the one I used for ranking on my second channel near the end of it. So we have the Shaman here behind the Golem, and I was well set up in this match. They tried to make a good little counter there, but you know, once you have ranged cards, especially strong ones like the Archer Queen behind a Golem, they're very difficult to get rid of. And they do manage to use a poison, but it doesn't completely take out the Archer Queen, and that really gives me some more space here. And it took me a long time with the championship overall to really kind of break through the early rounds, partly because I was I needed to get better, and I was also trying to find a deck that I actually kind of liked. So I tried out a bunch of different decks, and eventually I did settle on one that I used towards the end, as you'll see. And I like that deck a lot because it's a deck I've used in my videos, and now I'm using it in ranked a little bit, and I really like that deck. It's a very creative deck, and you'll see it later on in the video here. And this was tough. They're at 47 HP here, and I'm just trying to think, what do I want to do? Tricky situation, and hoping I can come up with something, but unfortunately, you know, I know they have skeletons themselves here, and just not a lot to work with. Not many troops to play. And that's part of what was bugging me about this deck in the end, was that there was a lot of, you know, if you messed up, it was difficult to get back on track, I felt like. So yeah, unfortunately, I got close in this one. I think this one ends probably with a loss here, and that's unfortunate. But it goes to show, you know, I did a lot of searching to try and figure out what decks I was going to actually like using. So this was not one of them in the end. This was not one of the ones I chose to use. So there was my chest from that one. Now here I actually picked up one of the legendary offers from the shop, so I thought I'd show you guys what card I ended up getting out of it. So yeah, surprise legendary chest opening, and what will it be? It is the Archer Queen, and I don't even get enough to upgrade her. So that's real cool. And this was just a good match right here, I thought. Well, I don't know. It was a tough opponent. And a lot of these other matches in here are going to be against pretty tough opponents I played. Or at least people who were pretty highly ranked from other seasons or this season or previous championships. And I just thought these were some of the highlight matches. So this one starts out okay, but they're blocking all 3 lanes, which isn't very good for my setup here. This is the deck I was talking about that I end up deciding to go with for this championship. But it relies on catapults, so if they're blocking the lanes with skeletons, I have to get rid of the skeletons, because that's what I was focusing on doing, using my Ice Elemental and Golem, but then they start catching me off in the other guard in the other lanes there, and I really need another Ice Elemental, something to play, and unfortunately I'm just not getting it. And then they play a catapult, which I honestly was not exactly expecting, and I tried to push them back, and I think it would have worked, and I would have caught their catapult, but the problem was because the Skull Queen had her ability activated, obviously, it made the skeletons rush me faster than the enchanters could catch up, so because of that, I wasn't able to push the catapult back, and I think if I had been able to, I might have won that match. So here was another interesting opponent here from Alpha Project. And again, just kind of getting a feel for this deck. This deck, basically, it's a catapult deck that uses a lot of different interesting cards to block, like the Ice Elemental, Golems, Boneyard, and it also has some cards to clear things like the, well, Ice Elemental for skeletons, and then the Vampire for stronger stuff. But as you'll see later on, the Vampire, it's tricky relying on the Vampire as your strongest sort of clearing card, because the Vampire, without like comboing with the Ice Elemental, the Vampire definitely, you know, or the Golem, the Vampire doesn't take out everything. Like, you know, it can clear certain cards, but it's not good against all situations. So this one right here, I thought I was going to do okay, but then, you know, I was putting my strategy into effect, but unfortunately I couldn't really stop them in the bottom lane, and, you know, I tried to just keep focusing on the middle lane, but unfortunately I really just, if I'd gotten an Ice Elemental, again, there were some cards that I could have drawn that might have helped me out a bit, but I don't know. Goes to show, against good players, this deck had mixed results, but it actually got me more wins against good players, I think, than any other deck I played with, which is funny, but because I thought initially this was kind of a gimmicky deck, especially with the enchanters, and later on I kind of debated getting rid of the enchanters and putting something else in their place, but they do kind of have their uses. I mean, one use of the enchanter is to work against ranged cards like archers or Phoenix, and then I also use them to just try and push cards away in front of the catapults. So right here, looks like I'm in really bad shape in this match, but I actually managed to pull it back together. It looked like I was in pretty bad shape right here, but, you know, I pull it back together. I recognize they only have melee cards out there, so I decided to just focus on that. And it's starting to work out okay. Then they play a dragon. So naturally, I'm pretty concerned here. I try to focus on countering that lane. I get lucky because the dragon gets caught by the Ice Elemental, but I'm still not doing very much damage to the dragon. But for some reason there, they just totally ignored the top lane. I don't know why. They could have played the dragon there. I don't know why they ignored the top lane, but whatever. This match right here, guys, look at this. This player was #1 in last season, in the previous championship, the Storm Elementals Championship, the #1 ranked player, I guess, in the end from that championship. They were first place, and I went up against them here, and I managed to pull off a win. With this, again, the same deck with the Catapult, the Ice Elemental, Boneyard, Golem, etc. I also have a couple interesting cards in there that kind of help me to counter certain things like the Shaman and the Vampire. They give me the ability to counter, you know, like my opponent, if they play Ice Elementals, I can counter them, or I can use it to counter like a Mage. Something like that, and the Vampire gives me the ability to counter things like Hollow Knights, you know, or other cards that it would work well against, like Black Knight or Executioner, things that would cause me problems. I can use those two cards on, and it covers a pretty large variety of different possible threats my opponent might play out there. And as you can see, I just really get set up, turn their Hollow Knight, and get the Ice Elemental in front of the Catapult, and then that's hard for them to clear at close range, because even if they play a ranged card, you know, it forces them to have to clear the Catapult, and they managed to do that, but it took them, you know, some time to do it, and by that time I was able to set up, and basically I had 3 different lanes that I was able to play dangerous cards in, and they just weren't able to keep up with that. And the final one, they just couldn't clear fast enough, so he was a tough opponent. I played from one of the Russian clans, and pretty tough opponent here. See how this match goes. My usual start here is I like to either play the Golem or the Boneyard. If I get Mana Ritual, I have a Boneyard, I'll play the Boneyard, and then play the Golem once I have the positioning, so I can play the Golem farther up. If I can't play anything else, I'll just play the Golem as soon as possible. And right here, they started rushing me pretty fast, so unfortunately, I played the Shaman kind of in the wrong spot. I would have gone back and played that in the middle lane if I could have done that over again. But I was trying to play my cards quickly because I recognized that they were playing quickly, and I was like, okay, I need to just block their DPS that they're putting out there. So you can see here, I try to just clear some of what they're throwing at me, but they're already doing a lot of damage to my health right there, and as you can see, unfortunately, they just keep playing stuff right on me here, and I was just having a hard time getting rid of it super quickly because I had a lot of more like mid-game mana cards here, and while I was able to eventually, I think, and then that didn't really work either. I didn't actually get rid of the pirate, and I'm finally like, I just need to get rid of that pirate. And I do actually get the win there. For some reason, I thought they were going to play a cannon shot and beat me at the end or something. But no, I actually managed to pick up that win against a pretty decent Russian player. Another tough opponent here. And we'll see what I do. This deck held up quite well against a lot of tough opponents. It was probably my favorite deck to play against tough opponents just because I felt like I really knew, a lot like I did back when I actually won the Dark Angels Championship. I felt like with this deck, I knew how I wanted to play the cards, and that was the biggest advantage for me, was I was comfortable with, like, how I wanted to play the cards, what cards to play against what type of threats. And you can see right here going in with the Shaman against the Ice Elemental. And they'd use Gust of Wind there. So I'm wondering what to do in this situation, as you can see, because I couldn't really play the Boneyard very well because of the Ice Elementals in 2 lanes. So I decided to just go straight for the Catapult, force them to use a Black Witch, and now, because they took out their own Ice Elemental and my Shaman took out their other Ice Elemental, now I could play the Boneyard, and then they played the Hollow Knight, and my counter to the Hollow Knight, of course, is the Vampire. So I got that in there. And then I went for the other Boneyard. I don't know if that was a good decision or not, but it allowed me to get that second Catapult set up. And then you can see I got these full Boneyards practically like back to back. And then you'll see right again here, and I think in this next hand... Oh no, I didn't get another one. Okay, but I did put the Ice Elemental in front of the Catapult, and the Ice Elemental able to freeze the dragon just for a couple of seconds there, which was really enough to get the Golem going, and I pick up the win on another really good player. And that was a round 8 win as well. This was my best push that I had here. That was, picking that win right there was to pick up the gold ribbon, so I thought that was a pretty worthy win. of doing that. And there was one more match I got. You can see here, I was just checking to see who it was, and I was like, oh yeah, this is a pretty decent player here. Fair bit of experience. So I was pretty happy to be able to get that win. And 2 more rounds, and I really think I could have gotten to round 10. The opponent I got here next only had 2,500 trophies. Obviously, there can be some good players with low trophies, but you'll see what happens. Unfortunately, I don't know, I'm sure I misplayed something, but, so, you know, I did my usual thing. I saw what was going on there. I went for the Boneyard. I had the cards to go for the Boneyard, so that's what I did. I played my Golem, exactly the same setup I always do, and you're going to see what happens here. In theory, the Boneyard should have been the right thing, but they had arrows. I thought about, if they hadn't played arrows right there, maybe I could have played the Vampire behind the Golem, but you'll see what happens there. They managed to metamorph the Golem, and I instantly was like, uh-oh. I should have played the Vampire right there behind the Golem, maybe, but even still, the Mud Elemental is just taking it out too fast, and I don't believe the Vampire can take out the Mud Elemental by itself. At least in Ranked, I can't usually get it to, so I was unsure of what to do right here. I was like, I think I need to use the Vampire and the Ice Elemental, and that's my only real shot. And this might have worked out okay, because I can freeze both of them, but the problem is, as you'll see, they get an Archer Queen behind that Mud Elemental, and I don't really have any way to deal with it. I didn't really mean to necessarily do what I did right there with the Enchanter. That was kind of a mistake. For some reason, I thought that they might get pushed together, and then I could freeze them, but it didn't end up working out that way. So unfortunately, I lost that match, and that kind of sucked. So anyways, unfortunately, that's going to do it for this video. It was a fun try, I thought. Pretty decent match, but at the end of the day, pretty decent push, but at the end of the day, I came up a little bit short. I think I need some more practice with that deck, and then maybe next time I could get it. So anyways, leave a like if you enjoyed. Let me know what you thought about this video in the comments, and what other types of content I should create. Maybe subscribe if you're new to my channel. And thanks for watching, guys, and stay tuned for more videos.